You are not your name. I am not my name. Nobody is their name. No thing is its name. A name is a construct. A name is a way of identifying something so that other people will understand your meaning. A name dictates how people know you. My name is Austin. People know me as Austin. But Austin is not me. There's a fine distinction there, but it is an important distinction. Words have meanings outside of the object, the idea, the event that the word describes. Austin has meanings outside of me. Outside of everyone who's ever been named Austin, outside of everyone who's ever been named Augustus, from which the name comes from, outside of the idea of August, which also came from Augustus, so I probably should have listed that one first. Words exist outside of a vacuum. Words aren't just a vacuum. Words are not just, this is a bookcase, this is a chair, this is a fish, this is freedom, this is politics. Words don't exist in a vacuum where that is the only thing that they are. Words have meanings outside of that, and for any sort of proof, just look to any word that has ever had its definition changed in the past 250 years. Gay is a wonderful example. Lucky, happy, joyous. You can even look within an individual over a period of time and see how the connotative feel of a word changes for that person. Growing up, mom means something very different than it does when you're an angsty teenager yelling mom outside your door right before you slam it for the 13th time that week, which is different than mom of a college student who is struggling so hard and just wants to hear some happy thoughts, which is different than mom of the 30-something that is scared because they have a family and they don't know what to do. They have a house and they have bills and they have a real job and they just want to escape, which is different than the mom of the 50 or 60-something who sees their parent who's been there their whole life in the hospital, and they don't know if they'll make it. Which is different for the mom of that same person when their children call them. You see how even with one word, with one person, you get so many different definitions. The word doesn't exist in a vacuum. Words themselves elicit a response, elicit a meaning, elicit an idea. And giving that word to something, whether or not intended, passes on that idea. So, if you know someone named Austin, and you didn't exactly get along, and he was kind of a prick, you might subconsciously or even consciously look to me and see a similarity, whether or not it exists. Because the word itself, the name, has a meaning. So, you got to be careful with the words you use. At the same time, you've got to make sure that you are not a product of the words and the names that are given to you. Someone says something about you. It's an opinion, but it's words. It's this weird little dichotomy there. You don't need to care because it's just their opinion, but you need to care because these are words that are used to describe you, and whether or not you want it or whether or not they want it, the meaning of those words will be passed on to you. But you're not chained to this idea. That's the really important part to take away from this, is that you're never chained to the words that are used for you, to the names that you are given. Though I am named Austin, I do not have to abide by any of the ideas from which come with the name. Just because there is a chair over here to my left does not mean that it has to abide by all of the ideas that come with chair, which could mean cushioned, which this chair is not, which could mean four-legged, which this chair is not, which could mean brown or wooden, which this chair is still not. It does not have to abide by all the ideas which come with it. But when you say the word, the ideas come across. And that's why you got to be really picky and choosy with your words and be really specific when you say something that's not incredibly clear. When I say my name is Austin and that comes with all of the ideas that come with that name, that is a vague thing. That is an improper usage of the name given to myself by me. If I wanted to be specific with that, I could say that in general, what seems to be the case is that the population of those with the first name Austin tend to be split up into two major groups. One is usually a really artistic group. I see those all the time when I have to Google or Facebook my own name in order to help people find me. Guitar players and singers and dancers and all that. It's everywhere. And then at the same time, when you go and you read news articles of people who share my name, it generally happens to be those in the realm of sports. There's a lot of baseball and a lot of soccer and a lot of football. It's just a name for that. And so, if I want to be precise in saying how I do and do not fit the ideas that come with the name that is given to me, I would talk about how I don't have a lot of the performing arts qualities about me, and I don't have a lot of the physicality about me. That I prefer to use my physicality in relation to my creativity, and my creativity is not of the visual or of the performing kind. It is of the kinds that is found in theoretical thought and somewhat in presentation of ideas. I am primarily a theoretical mathematician and secondary a communication study. And that would be closer to the proper usage of the name which unfortunately or fortunately, depending on your interpretation, defines me. The meaning here is that words come with ideas. Whether or not you've seen this lovely dorm room of mine, you have a good indication of what a chair is, and yet you haven't seen my chair, so you don't know what my chair looks like. So all of these ideas of a chair in your head, unless you just happen to know exactly what this chair is, are wrong. And you fell into this trap subconsciously. May not have even been aware that you fell into it. May not have even been aware that it was a trap, but it's a trap. Behind this camera that's recording this speech right now, there's a bookshelf. And it's probably not what you're thinking. And the fact that you won't see that means that as long as you have an idea of what this bookshelf is that's behind this camera, you're improperly using the name. Names are a big deal. I mean, a lot of it is precise and semantic in nature, but at the same time, you can't escape the fact that words have meanings. When I say there's a bookshelf behind this camera, you have an image of what a bookshelf is, whether or not you're thinking about contextually in this great dorm room of mine, whether or not you're thinking size, whether or not you're thinking shape, whether or not you're thinking textually at all, realistically. When I say the word bookshelf, you have an image. That image is put upon the shelf in my room, in your minds. Whether or not that image is right or wrong, that's the case. And so, if I want to show exactly what this exact bookshelf is. I have to be really particular in the way I phrase that. I have to accept the fact that there were already ideas that belonging to that name, belonging to that word, belonging to that idea. I have to respect and acknowledge the fact that those ideas exist ahead of time and show why that may or may not be the case. We as a people need to show and need to respect and honor that there are ideas that exist outside of what is or what we believe there is. We need to accept those, and we need to use those as a basis from which to state what we believe truly is. I understand the majority of people named Austin are generally either really active physically or really active in performing arts. I respect that this type of image exists regardless of whether or not you know me. I do not belong to the ideas of that. And I'm aware that I'm making a huge generalization about a large population here, but that just happens, just let it be the example. Because I don't abide by those, and I've explained a little bit about myself, you can see that whether or not you've even noticed, your image, your idea of the name Austin has changed. And that's what's really important. When you want to get a message across, when you want to say something important, you need to make sure that you're getting across the message that you're intending as best you can. You need to take this internal idea, all the possible implications of this name, this word, these words, this combination of words, the whole name, the whole shebang. You need to take all of it in its whole, your ideas, and construct what you say in such a way that the images and the ideas that exist in other people's minds, subconsciously or consciously, doesn't matter, are shaped by what you've presented. That is what effective communication is. That is what effective naming is. We can look at naming in pop culture. We can look at naming in social situations. We can look at naming on national levels. Effective communication and effective naming shapes the way the audience views, shapes the audience's internal image of those names. So, although naming seems like a trite semantic thing, it's the most important thing when you're trying to give information, pass ideas from one person to another. Because we don't all have the same image of a word, of a name in our minds. We don't have the same image of the word yesterday as we do today. If you just had a fight with your parents, the word mom is not the same for you today as it may have been yesterday before that unfortunate argument happened. That is the world that we live in. That is how names are constructed. That is how naming and ideas work. So if you want to communicate something effectively, you got to acknowledge that the names exist. You got to acknowledge that the ideas are there, and you shape them. You construct yourself specifically for that purpose. So I kind of rambled on about this. I didn't really prepare anything for this, but I just really wanted to get across this idea of naming. It's something that I'm really interested about, and I plan on starting research into the concept of naming. I'm just going to specifically be focused on naming in adoptees. I myself am an adoptee. It's really interesting because legally, we have one name, but depending on the type of adoption, you can actually end up with a scenario where at one point in your life or at one point before birth, you were known as a different name. So you have a multiple name, and the knowledge that you're adopted can lead you to looking towards finding out this other name that you have. And it can kind of break all of these ideas and images of the name that you are given, the name that people know you by. So I'm going to be working on that a lot. I'm planning on presenting that type of speech, that type of data, as often as possible. And I'll kind of try to keep this a little bit updated with that kind of stuff. So until then, until next time I decide to randomly talk about naming and culture and society and personally, just remember that your words don't exist in a vacuum. Words have meanings, and you gotta respect that they have those meanings if you want to be able to use them effectively. Till next time.